much, delegates and community activists and voters who might be interested in hearing from your future state senator. Good evening. My name is Suzanne Muley. I am the chairwoman of the Salt Lake County Republican Party, and I thank you so much for being here, away from your family and friends, and wonderful traffic that you had to fight through to get here. I wanted to say thank you to several people who, without their help, this evening would not have happened. One of them is, she's not here tonight, but our office manager, Valerie Kingsbury. Quite a few of you probably know her and have seen her. She's that unsung hero who's behind the scenes, making everything like this, and the feet below are like this. That would be Valerie. So I want to thank her publicly for all that she does. I want to thank Doran Barton. He is Senate Chair 13, and he's also our videographer tonight. He'll be videotaping the debate, and so that we can post it on the website and send it out to the delegates. I want to give a shout out to his side business. It's called Moo Films. So thank you so much, Doran, for doing that. I want to recognize and thank Holly Richardson. If you can stand up, Holly. Holly's our timekeeper. I don't know if anyone has seen her blog. She has the blog Holly on the Hill. She's a former state representative, and she just threw her hat in the ring yesterday to announce her bid for Senate seat 14 in Utah County. So we're very glad to have her here as well. Lastly, we have our special guest moderator. I think that most of you might know him. If you do not, you should get to know him. There's many things I could say about him, but I will be as frugal with my words and introduction as he is. Please welcome Frugal Dougal as our moderator for this evening.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. Please join me, if you'll stand and follow me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I was given a set of rules for this debate that the candidates have agreed to. The format will be, we'll have opening statements, then we'll have a round robin of questions that are written by the audience that I'll randomly select, and then we'll have closing statements. So we'll begin first with our opening statements. Each candidate has 30 seconds, and we will start with Lynn and work our way down the line.
I'm Lynn Outward. I'd like to thank my family and supporters. I worked at the University of Utah as a professor and researcher for 15 years, and recently worked with the legislators on opposing medical marijuana. And I learned during that experience that the legislators aren't doing their homework. I could add that dimension to our government as a conservative legislator who will do my own homework and fight to keep costs and taxes down.
"16 years ago, my husband and 4 daughters and I moved to the state of Utah. We quickly fell in love with the majestic mountains, the wonderful citizens in the area, the city events that each city has, and we found it to be a great place to live. I am committed to maintaining those values and that way of life that is noted for our great state of Utah."
This works. Hello. Hello, I'm Jordan Tusher. I grew up in South Jordan. I live now in Harriman. I work mostly in Riverton. My background's been in law. I graduated from the J. Reuben Clark Law School at BYU at the top of my class, and since then worked in international legal reform in developing nations in Eastern Europe and Africa, and now work for the LDS Church doing strategic contracts. I'm tied to my core principles of limited government, local control, and creative problem solving. Thanks.
Hi, Alita Taylor. I've served in your community for many years in many different governmental positions on different boards, your water, sewer, special service districts. I've lobbied for you in Washington. I ran for this position before when Senator Butters stepped down, and here I am again running for it when another senator has stepped down. We need female representation in the Senate. I have a broad base of experience. The 1,270 bills do not surprise me.
Good evening, I'm Mark Woolley. We have serious problems to solve and we need serious people to do it. My profession is in construction forensics, and so every day I deal with very difficult challenges. And in that profession, we have to find successful ways to find resolutions. I'll work diligently as your senator to do just that. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Rich Cunningham, born and raised in Utah, from parents that both taught school. Wife is a teacher, so I hear about education on a daily basis. As a profession, I deal around the United States on budgets, pensions on a daily basis, and helping corporations get the bang for their buck and what they can do. I believe in less government, and most of you know that as I've served the last 3 years in there, and we need strong leadership that's proven to move this thing to the next level. Thank you.
If you don't remember anything about this debate, remember these two things: true conservative leadership and real results. I believe in small, limited government. I believe in individual responsibility. I believe in fiscal responsibility. I am the one who will get results. If you look at my background and history, I've served as legislative counsel. I know how to get things passed. I want to be your advocate, and tonight in this debate, you'll see my passion and drive because it's time we get things done. Thank you.
I'm Ed Loomis, and my background is as a business leader. I built a company, got it pretty big, worked all across the country to look at how expensive healthcare is, and I've even traveled the world looking at free market healthcare alternatives. And what I found is the healthcare industry is eating up the budgets of small businesses, of families, and of course our local legislature. Our current legislature is not doing anything to increase free market principles in the healthcare industry. We can take that money and we can give it into schools and transportation, the other areas that need it. That's why I'm running. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lincoln Fillmore. I want to acknowledge my wife and son. They're in the back. You've probably heard Nicholas a little bit tonight. I want to thank them publicly for the support that they are to me in this campaign and in my life. I was a fourth grade teacher in my career. I became a school principal, a school business manager, a school board member, and now I'm a school problem solver. I'm the guy they call to come in when they need expert help and bold solutions to solve complex problems. I look forward to talking to you about the bold solutions we can bring to Utah together tonight. Thanks.
Okay, as we go into the round robin of questions, these are questions that you wrote that I selected. Assume 1 minute per question, unless I tell you otherwise. In case you didn't notice, our timer is right here, front and center. Holly, you want to raise your hand? So the first question will go to Lynn, Susan, and Jordan. The question is, according to the Institute of Justice, Utah ranks number 12 for most burdensome and onerous professional licensing regulations. What would you do to improve this standing? Lynn first.
It's interesting you brought that up. The solution that's being proposed, or not a solution, is to raise physician licenses by $5,000 per year to help pay for the expansion of Medicaid. So that's an onerous thing for certain physicians, but it's more of the principle of the thing. I think that's what they're talking about when they say it's an unfair type of licensing system that we have.
My husband has been a small business owner for most of his life, and in that regard, he's had to deal with licensing. In fact, just today he was telling me about his frustrations about licensing and that is mandated by the government. I think that we need to take a good look at, as a senator and in our legislature, take a good look at what is required for small business owners. They are so important to our economy. They help provide businesses and places for students to go when they graduate from college. We need to look closely at what is required, and then we need to make changes in our requirements in our state of Utah. Thank you.
You know, I think that regulation, whether it's on the federal level or on the state level, is the biggest impact that we're going to have on our economy and the biggest threat to keeping our economy going in the upcoming years. And so one of the things that I've talked about most readily in my campaign is fighting against that regulation, whether it be on the federal level or whether it be on the state level. I talked to a delegate just the other night who told me that she had started a new business, a contracting business with her husband, and they had a long list of people that were at their door and that wanted to participate in what they were offering. But all of the regulation that was there was hampering their business, that they had to close their doors. And that's the problem. Small business can't compete with big business when we have so many regulations in the way. And so I would fight against that. Again, whether or not it's a state regulation or a federal regulation, it has to stop.
Question number 2 is for Alita, Mark, and Rich. Question is, would you reduce government involvement in healthcare? And if so, how?
Absolutely. I was one of the first Utahns to speak up against Obamacare, clear back when most people had not read it. Senator Butters got me a copy. We studied that together. It's a very convoluted black financial hole that literally Nancy Pelosi had it right when she said you gotta pass it to figure out what's in it, which is terrible. We should never do that. So what I'm looking at is practical solutions that are driven here in the state. The federal government should have never been involved in our health care in the first place. We have wonderful healthcare institutions here, and we can come up with programs that meet the needs of the most needy in our state. I've worked on several of the different versions of the healthcare in the state. I did like the Utah Health Exchange. However, it didn't really have a chance to get going as much as it needed to. But I would support that kind of a healthcare solution, local.
You know, we recognize that the free market has always done a better job, whether it be healthcare or any other issue that we're faced with. Big government just does not do it well. One of the things that we can begin to do immediately is to rely on the free market system and to make it easier for them to begin to bring creative and new solutions. We do live in a new world, and we have so much more access to all the things that are out there. So we need to look at creative solutions to reduce the cost of healthcare, but we need to do that as a people, and the government needs to not do that. As we look at the specific needs of those that are critically ill and who need help, there's ways to look at the financial reserves that we have and to look at a very systematic way in which we can provide the basic health care they need without tampering or hurting our economy.
You know, I've had my health license in the industry for 30 years, so I've been involved in the middle of that during that time. You know, what's interesting that is the federal government's trying to tell us once again what we need to do as individuals. We need our Utah solutions. The other challenge is what we've tried to do, and it was with the first proposal the governor has, we tried to eat the entire elephant in one bite, and we cannot do that. The second one, we were going to pass all of the different expenses now to the doctors and the professions, our, Merit Medicals, Ultradents. We were now going to attack that industry to make them pay for it. We've not come up with the good solutions. It's back on the table again with what's happening out there today. We need to come up with the right solutions. one bite at a time to make sure that we can pay for it fiscally. I have voted against all of them to this point and have been in the conversations, and we are getting better. It's back on the table. It's going to come this session, and I want to continue in that conversation because right now we do not have good answers because everybody is not willing to budge. Thank you.
This next question is for Jay, then Ed, then Lincoln. What are your thoughts on the ESSA? That's the Every Student Succeeds Act that passed in Congress this week.
First of all, I think, can you hear me? Okay. First of all, I think education is a critical issue for our state. And I'm a big supporter of local control. When the federal government passes laws that tell us what they think is best and take away our ability to choose what's right for our children, I oppose that. So I am in favor of taking control back and actually having control at the local level. And the way I'll attack that on a state level is actually by unraveling the complicated and tangled funding system we have. We can do a better job at getting money into the classroom and having people who know the needs of the students make decisions of where we should put resources. We can do a better job of empowering parents who care about their children's education and give them the power to make those decisions and to actually make real results. That's what I stand for. That's what I'll do in the Senate. Thanks.
ESSA is going to be about as successful as No Child Left Behind was, which, as sad as it is, came from a Republican administration and Congress. So we absolutely need to push back, and we need to make our people not vote for it, but push back against it. I don't know what else to say other than, yeah, local control is the way to go. And that's my answer, pretty simple. So I want to answer the other question real quick, too, with the rest of my time. Utah has healthcare socialism, which ties into the first question, which ties into this question. We don't need legislators that say, I have a good idea of how to fix healthcare. We need legislators to say, we're going to get the Utah state government out of entrepreneurs' ways, and they're going to fix it. That's how you fix it. Not legislators coming up with good ideas, but by getting out of the way. We own 2 health insurance companies, a whole health insurance market, healthcare market. Avenue H is a laughing stock of the industry. These are all things that cost us money that we get no benefit from.
I want to thank whoever submitted this question. I've been implementing bold solutions in education for 15 years. If I could sum up my education platform in one sentence, it would be this. I want you to have more control over your child's education, working with your child's teachers, and I want politicians at every level to have less. As you read my literature, one of my main platforms is to push back against federal overreach, starting by requesting waivers at every level of state government when the federal government tries to tell us what we need to do in our communities. We can create a better education system if we are able to innovate at the local level. As your state senator, I will run a bill that will devolve power from the state boards, and from district boards of education down to the district levels so that principals have more control over their schools, teachers have more control in their classrooms, and parents can work in partnership with teachers to find the best educational solution for their child.
Okay, this next question, we'll start with you, Susan, then Jordan, then Alita. The question is, do you support Common Core, yes or no, and why?
I've always been for local control. When Common Core comes in the face of local control, we need to fight it. The standards that Utah has, as long as they are Utah's and the federal government does not have the power to change them, then they're okay. But as soon as the federal government has any power to change our standards in our state, then we have to say no and fight against it. I also believe in local control 100%. I believe that the teacher in the classroom and the parent is where the education really needs to occur. I believe parents need to have choices in education, and they need to have the options in education that will fit the unique needs of their children, and that is local control. Thank you.
I think Common Core was an idea that went south. I mean, essentially it started as a Western governor's idea to be able to provide a standard, a set of curriculum that schools could choose to use or not choose to use, and the federal government and the state decided to squeeze onto that and make it a mandate throughout our school systems. I agree with the other candidates that say that the best type of education is the most local type of education. And so what we need to do is push down the control from the State Board of Education to the local school districts and to the local administrators, because they are the ones that understand the day-to-day needs of their students. If you have a student in Juab County at Nebo High School and another student at Harriman High School, their needs are going to be different. And so the principals and teachers should be empowered with both their curriculum and their funding to be able to meet the needs of their students and lead for more academic achievement.
I absolutely do not like Common Core. It is the federal government controlling our education curriculum. There are liberal standards. There are curriculum books that are already chosen, a group of books that are given to the states, and then the states choose from those curriculums. I do not approve of that. I believe that the ethics, the civics, the American history that includes our religious roots are not included in Common Core. I see it as federal overreach, and you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, and we've already seen that happen. We are tying the hands of our teachers in our classrooms. They are not able to spend their time teaching in the way that they would be able to if they were not held by those Common Core standards. I would like to see it done away with. We have educators here that can provide the most excellent education for our students that can be overseen by parents.
This next question starts with Mark, then Rich, then Jay. The question is, will you support constitutional carry? Will you support constitutional carry?
I'll admit, I don't know enough about it to even begin to answer. I think as we have a lot of questions posed to us, one of the things we do first is we say, okay, we need to do the right research. When I build a company, I build it strong, and that means I have to ask the right questions, and there's no way any one of us has all the answers. So when we talk about constitutional carry, I could ramble and say, I think this is what it is, but honestly, I don't. And so I'm not going to answer it tonight because I can't give you an answer that I could be comfortable with. But I could study it, and I could understand it, and then be able to look at would I or would I not believe in that, and how you as delegates and how we as a Republican Party believe in that. Thank you.
Short answer is yes, we have that available. You know, it gets into the concealed carry permits that are out there. This bill came up 2 years ago. When you look at it, that we've had those discussions about it. I voted for the bill. I will continue to support the right to bear arms. This whole federal government that wants to take that right away from us is wrong. We should not allow it. We need to continue to fight for our rights to not have the federal government once again giving us intrusion that's in there. And that's where it needs to stop. That's the answer, flat out. Leave our guns alone. Give us the right that we have by Constitution to take care of our lives and protect what we need to.
I support the Second Amendment, and I support gun rights. My answer is very simple. I do not believe the federal government should be controlling our guns and what we do. I believe that's our constitutional right, and so I do support the Second Amendment. And that's a pretty simple answer.
Okay, the next question, we'll start with Ed, then Lincoln, then Lynn. The question is, if you were to have individual liberties on one side of the scale and common good or society's needs on the other, which carries more weight, or are they equal? How do you make those decisions?
Well, obviously I'm Republican, so I'm going to stay on the personal rights more than the rights of the common good. I think it goes to the heart of what the Declaration of Independence says, which is we are free, we are born free. We were born with unalienable rights to be free. It's not something to be giving, it's something that we were endowed with when we were born. So when it's a tie between the two, I go with personal rights.
As government grows bigger at all levels, citizens grow smaller. It takes a larger government to put the needs of the community or the greater good over the needs of an individual. Our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution make it very clear that governments serve a purpose, and that purpose is to secure individuals in their individual rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's no question that I will always come down on the side of the government fulfilling its role, which is protecting your individual rights.
The Founding Fathers argued pretty effectively that the common good is dependent on individual liberties, but a good example of this is the medical and marijuana issue, because a libertarian would say live and let live, individual liberty trumps the case, but when a person's smoking marijuana and driving a car, accidents have been shown to go way up in Colorado. And the common good is then affected by too extreme exercise of individual liberties.
Okay, question number 7. We will start with Jordan, then Alita, then Mark. You guys getting the idea of this rotation? Okay. Question is, what do you think of Senate Bill 54?
I would have voted against Senate Bill 54. I really enjoy the caucus system. I've been involved from the time I was 17 years old, got elected as a state delegate, and got to see the ability that an individual has to influence politics. I think that's great. It's something unique to our state that a lot of other states don't have. And the minute that we turn it over so that the individuals can go straight to a primary, then it just turns into big money and big politics, and you don't have that individual touch that we need on the Utah level. And so I support each of you being here today and being involved, and I would support the caucus system in sustaining it and protecting it against the intrusion of just having a primary.
I agree. I too have been involved since the first time I voted for a California governor back in 1981, named Reagan, and my eldest son is named after that president. The caucus system allows those who want to be involved, who will do the research, to get the answers and then report back to their neighbors who maybe don't want to be involved right now, can't be involved right now. I love that representative part of the caucus system. I have been your Senate 10 chair within the Republican Party for the last 3 years. I have voted repeatedly to support the caucus convention system. It is the best thing for Utah and brings many advantages to our state.
If I could for a minute, I'd like each of you to look around who's in this room, because we're here because of the caucus system. We have a unique opportunity where a sitting senator is now stepping down, and due to that process, we have the ability very systematically to come together to discuss our concerns, the issues, and then to vote and to replace that person. I personally love, when I first moved here almost 25 years ago, it was obviously a new system to me. And yet I love so many parts of it. It's a great way to involve the local and on a local level, each and every one of us. And so I'm grateful for it and I support it. Back to that earlier question, the reason I didn't answer it, because I didn't understand the question and you heard my answer to that. But now that, because I've had a concealed weapons permit for 18 years and I've never heard it asked or said that way. So that's why I responded. But again, as you saw a taste of my personality, if I don't understand something, I'm not going to blow you off and just give you an answer.
Next question, we'll start with Rich, then Jay, then Ed. Will you work to break the dealership model to allow direct-to-consumer vehicle sales like Tesla?
Thank you. That one obviously was planned. I can tell that. You know, it's an interesting process on Capitol Hill. You need to have consensus from everybody. And you've got stewards. You have men and women that spend hundreds of millions of dollars. You have the manufacturers, and then you have the new style, which is the Tesla coming in. It is a model that's going to come in. We need it. That bill, and I applaud Kim Coleman that's here, our Representative Coleman. She brought it to the forefront. It's going to happen. We know that. But the consensus has got to be from all of them. That's why you've got to have somebody that's involved in the process that understands how the legislation works, that it's a compromise, that you need to do that. We are working on that. Senator Bramble and I talked about it today with Representative Coleman, how we can make this affordable for all of us and make it worth it. Also on SB 54, I just want to make that final comment on that one. I was one of only a few legislators on this side of the valley and in the Salt Lake Valley that voted no against the bill. And I've stood up for it, and I believe that's the right way to go. Thank you.
The answer to the question is yes. I'm a free market economist. I don't believe the government should be picking winners and losers. Don't think they should be making unlevel playing fields. I think that our free market system works, that if Tesla wants to come in and be able to sell cars under their model, that will help our economy. I think that's what we should be doing, and I will work for that. I agree with Rich. It takes someone, though, who can actually work these issues and can actually get things done. It doesn't happen overnight. And part of it is standing up to special interest groups, standing up to those who have opposing opinions, and actually fighting to get real results. That's where I think I'll excel. That's why I want to be your advocate to actually pass good legislation like this. Thank you.
I want to address SB 54 really quick. My stance on that's pretty simple. Someone needs to tell Bob Bennett and Mike Levitt to suck it. Stop trying to mandate things just because you have a big name and a bunch of money. That stuff smells of corruption, and that's what we don't need here. And I haven't heard anyone do that yet. I even talked to the party, and they flat out said, I don't want to talk about who's behind Count My Vote. Someone needs to stand up and say, suck it. It's pretty easy. All right, sorry about that. Now, as far as the dealership issue goes, I think someone can stand up to the guys who have made a bloody fortune in the state of Utah selling cars and say, suck it. Let the free market decide. If you have a better model, you're going to win, and there's going to be no problem. So, Kim, thanks for your courage in putting that bill together. It's not a hard thing to do because there's actually a button you push that says, yes, I support that bill, and you can just push it, and it's pretty easy. All right, thanks.
Next question, we'll start with Lincoln, then Lynn, then Susan. The question is, do you think that religion should be part of the vetting process for immigration?
I want to be clear. You're asking, do I think that religion should be part of the vetting process for immigration? Thanks for the question. The answer is no. Our Constitution makes it very clear that there shall be no religious test to hold office in the United States. Implicit in that constitutional guarantee is that there's no religious test to enter the United States. And that if you enter the United States legally, that there's no religious test to becoming a citizen of the United States. However, there are legitimate security concerns regarding the refugee crisis, but the question really shouldn't be one of, do we have a blanket religious test to get into the country, but rather, given this situation, with this reality, in this part of the world, at this time, can we just open our doors and accept all refugees? And I think the answer to that question is clearly not until we get a system that can guarantee us more security than we have now. The San Bernardino shooter was vetted through that system. Clearly that system needs some fixes, but that fix is not to have a blanket religious test on all people who enter the country, which would be unconstitutional.
I think on this issue, Donald Trump has gone from entertainer to major annoyance, and I think this will finally turn the corner to get him out of the race and get the real Republicans all the attention from the media. I have a great respect for all religions, and it wouldn't be, if I'm liberal on one thing, it's immigration. I think that we need to allow people to come here. We were all immigrants at one time. And the process for an immigrant to come to the United States takes approximately 2 years. And the head of the Utah Safety Commission, Mr. Squires, and I probably got the name wrong of the Safety Commission, says that we are going to put them through a lot more tests before they come.
I think at the heart of this question is the Constitution. And for me, when an issue comes up, be it gun control or this question, religion, you go to the Constitution, and it guarantees that religion will not, that people have freedom of religion. It should not be used to vet immigrants who come. I agree that there are safety concerns, and we need to be very careful. We need to have heightened security to make sure that those people that come, no matter what religion they are not here to do harm. But I feel strongly that we should hold to those principles that have been important to our forefathers and to us as a country since the foundation of the country, and are established in our Constitution. And freedom of religion is one. Shouldn't be a test for coming into our country.
Next question, we'll start with Alita, then Mark, then Rich. In your district, there are many senior citizens, and this... I'm correct? Yeah. There's a certain rotation to this. Alita, then Mark, then Rich. In your district, there are many senior citizens and disabled citizens living on fixed incomes who already have a difficult time paying taxes. How will you address this issue when voting to raise taxes, especially when they seem to get raised nearly every session?
First off, I'll do everything in my power not to vote to raise taxes. Second off, I think there should be some point when you actually own your property in America. And I have no problem with working on legislation to put a cap on the property taxes of seniors over 65 for their first home. And maybe that cap, maybe it's incremental, maybe it's a percentage that goes down as they get older, because I also do believe that we also have to pay our share of things. But they've been paying their entire lives, and since the greatest part of the portion of that bill goes into the education system, they've raised their families, it's time to give them a break. There are many other things we can do within, as I worked on the city council, we were able to make legislation that also supported seniors. I worked with the seniors myself on the senior council.
You know, taxes are one of those words that none of us like to hear. And I think that as we think of taxes and the raising of taxes, we have to be awfully cautious before we do that. The need in my mind has to be preeminent. There has to be a very specific reason that we can agree on, something that has to be accomplished that is so great that the existing revenue simply can't meet. We have a lot of resources available to us. We need to use a better allocation of those existing resources. We need to ask the hard questions before we ever go down the path of trying to raise taxes. Currently, Salt Lake County is talking about raising taxes yet again, and many times when taxes go to be raised, we really don't even know what they're going to be used for. That comes back to building it strong and knowing exactly where our resources are, how to best use them before we consider putting additional burdens on you and I.
As your representative the last 3 years in House District 50, I voted against the gas tax. I voted against the $500 million bond that should not have happened the way it did. None of the legislators on the west side voted for it. We didn't have a plan. What we need to do, and again this year, is we've got a $500 million surplus that we all heard the last couple of days. I saw the governor's proposed, I thought it was interesting, the new proposed budget that came to the legislators today, and went through that. We have plenty of money again. There should not be any talk that we need to raise taxes again this year. I voted against the gas tax, the Prop 1 that's out there, and we already have a burden. Let's start taking some money back and giving it back to the taxpayers in this state. And as your senator in this district, I will continue to fight for that every time this comes up. Thank you.
This next question, we'll start with Jay, then Ed, then Lincoln. Much attention has been drawn to the fact that state law requires new cars to be sold through middlemen franchises when Tesla was denied a dealer license because they sell cars direct to consumers. What is the state's role in telling companies how to sell and distribute their products?
Well, I think we talked about the actual legislation earlier, and obviously I'm a free market economist, like I said, and I believe that businesses should be able to operate without cumbersome government intrusion. I mean, look, we don't need more government in our lives. We don't need more government in our business holding us down and actually creating obstacles. You know, our economy will flourish the less government's involved. So you ask about the role in government. I think the government should scale back. Certainly the government needs to protect people, and they need to protect individual liberties, but they don't need to be picking winners and losers. They don't need to be picking who succeeds. They don't need to be making the playing field unlevel. Our free market system will work if we let it and get government out. Thanks.
I think Jay said it right. Let's see, I think I'm not sure. Someone needs to tell these families to suck it for trying to get the government to defend their businesses. Let the free market. If you have a better way to do it, freaking let the market do it. And I think I had something in here about how easy it was to push a button to support. Oh, yeah, so the other thing is on taxes. I was in one of these debates 4 years ago, and I remember the question very specifically, will you ever support a tax raise? And I remember very specific people, never, never over my dead body will I do that. The problem is we send people to the legislature that doesn't always remember what a real revenue is, what actual revenue is, or what per capita revenue is. And then they get the people from the bureaucracy to come in and show smoke and mirrors about how we don't have enough money. And like Rich, we need to give that money back to the people, become more efficient. The Republican way is to lower the tax burden and spread it out.
As I often do, I'm going to go back to the core principle here, and that is that government exists to protect individuals in their personal liberty. I want you to have more control over your life, and I want the government to have less. If you own a business, I want you to have more control over that business, and I want the government to have less. That's the principle at play here, that the government should not be in the business of deciding who qualifies to sell what products. Those are questions that are by far left better to the market. And I'd like to touch on taxes, if I could. I want you to control more of your money, and I want the government to control less of your money. And in addition to voting against tax increases, I'll also vote against using your tax dollars as subsidies to support large hotels downtown, soccer stadiums. The highest and best use of your money is in your family, and the government should only take it away when it's doing its job of protecting your individual liberty.
Next question, we'll start with Lynn, then Susan, then Jordan. What do you believe is the difference between a democracy and a republic? And which do you think we are?
And to the republic for which it stands. So obviously, I think most of us understand that. So I'd like to take an opportunity to go, we could talk about political theory, but I think we should talk about something, and I'd like to go back to the tax issue. So I'm for lowering taxes. I think I'm one of the only ones candidates here, please speak up if any of you are for lowering taxes. I'm not for cutting services. So I think that we could keep with the surpluses we have and with redistribution of money in top-heavy things like the UTA, we could go a long time without raising taxes, but we could even lower taxes, as has been done recently in a nearby city. Thank you.
We have a representative form of government. That's why you're here tonight, to choose someone to represent you, and that means that we are a republic. And I want to talk about taxes for a moment too. I have noticed that governmental entities often feel like raising taxes is the first recourse when they feel they need something. It should be the last recourse. I've spent some time working in a governmental entity as I do now. Under my leadership as president of Jordan School District, this year we've gone through our budget. We have found enough money to build 2 schools without raising taxes. And that's what government entities should do. Look at their existing budgets, find ways to economize, be respectful of taxpayers' dollars, and only raise taxes that absolutely have to last recourse. Thank you.
I think anyone who's heard the Challenger School commercials can answer this question. We're a democratic republic. I have a degree in political science and understand that the role of a representative here is to represent their constituents and to be able to bring forth their issues and concerns on behalf of them within the legislature, and that's what I'm prepared to do. I just want to touch quickly on the property tax issue. One of the candidates talked about putting a cap possibly on property tax. And I think this is one area where you can see that someone has a good idea. It might be a good idea to put a cap on property tax so that people in retirement age don't have to pay that. But that's not the state's responsibility. That's an issue that should be pushed down to the county and city level. And so there's too many times where representatives get into the legislature and they get in that bubble and they start to think that they're trying to solve every problem in the world. There's a reason why we have county, city governments, and that would be an issue that would be solved at that level and not at the state level.
Next question is from Mark, then Rich, then Jay. How would you reduce and/or revise the current state budget?
I believe in one of the guiding principles in budgeting is that you start with a zero budget every year. Wouldn't that be a novel thought? To start from scratch and say, what are our specific needs and how are we going to meet those needs? And what kind of resources will it take to do that? All too often in organizations, much like governments, they always say, well, this is what we had last year and we need more this next year. And it's always more, more, and more. And so if we start fresh each year and say, what are our needs? This is the amount of revenues we anticipate. This is what we'll have. Then we can best solve those solutions and know where to put the money and where it's most needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Over the last 3 years, as your representative, I've had the chance to sit on 2 different appropriations committees. So going through this budget process, last year we went through an interesting process in the state budget and with all of the agencies that we asked them to come back with a what-if scenario. What if we didn't get the federal money? What if? What could you cut? And it was amazing as we started to drill down and hold accountability, these department heads, what we found and how money started to be reappropriated in there so we were more efficient looking at that. That is the process that we have committed in the House and in the Senate to make this thing happen. This is the new government, the governor's proposal today. I started looking at it today and having that experience. Now, the last 3 years, as your next senator, I've already looked at it and say, okay, this is great, but there are some things that we could probably tweak here. One of them, I believe we need more money as it comes out to get into the public education system. It's a handsome that we're going to look at the 4 3/4% WPU, but we can get better with what we're doing. Thank you.
I think the first thing you do is remember what the proper role of government is. Government's not there to solve all our problems or to fix everything for us. The proper role of government is to protect our individual liberties and our freedoms. And that's a very limited role. And I think we take a look at really what are we doing with our money. And we look, of course we look for fraud, waste, and abuse and things like that. But we have to ask the hard questions of, is it really serving the purpose of what government's there to do? And I think when we look at those questions and we remember our core values of what it really means to be a conservative and what it really means to be a Republican, we'll find a lot of areas that need work, that need people who will actually take on these issues and drive good legislation to actually get to where we know we should be in terms of our role of our government in our state. Thank you.
Next question is for Ed, then Lincoln, then Lynn. Would you support vouchers in education?
I'm not a voucher supporter, so I think the public money that we set up for public education should stay. What I am in favor of is giving parents choice for where their kids can go to school. And the school district that we live in has done a fabulous job. And in our family, we've been blessed with kids that don't always fit into the exact mold of a higher public or of the standard high school. And Jordan School District has provided some awesome teachers and some awesome alternatives. And so I think that we continue to support that. I just want to comment for the last couple seconds that I have as far as the state budget goes. And I'm going to give some ideas to Rich. When he goes back to the House, he can maybe cut these things out of the budget. The first would be Avenue H needs to go away. The University of Utah hospital subsidies need to go away. And someone needs to look at what happened to the share that the state of Utah owns in the 230 companies that the state of Utah spun off into private companies.
So it's an interesting question. The legislature passed vouchers in 2007. The people repealed vouchers by a 2-to-1 margin later that year. The people on this issue, I think, have spoken fairly loudly and fairly clearly. I worked hard for school vouchers. I lost. I respect the will of the people on that issue. But it doesn't change the principle, which is you should have more control over your child's education, and politicians should have less. We need to move away from the idea that what we're doing as the government is funding a system of schools, and instead focus on the idea that we are funding the education of a single child, not 600,000 kids, but of a single child, and then doing that 600,000 times, and empowering that child's parents to work collaboratively with teachers to come up with the best educational solution for that child. Our Constitution gives the responsibility to educate children with their parent where it ought to be.
I don't feel qualified to talk about the voucher system without more study of that, so I'll take a little time and talk about my principles on what I would do with the schools. I think my issue with the schools is not one of money. I think that with the $500 million, $400 million is by Senator Niederhauser and the governor earmarked to go to schools and to increase teacher salaries. I think that the issues are more the quality of education and what we can do to give children a little more freedom. I think what's wrong with the federal encroachments and even our own local sometimes is too programmed and too much testing of students. Let them be children. Thanks.
Okay, the next question is for Susan, then Jordan, then Alita. Every dollar collected in taxes and fees came from an individual's time sacrificed away from family and friends. Do you look at taxes as a patriotic duty to be paid, or would you consider yourself a steward, fiduciary, with the obligation to protect those sacrifices against waste?
I would absolutely consider myself as a representative of the public to protect the taxpayers from waste. I feel that that is my responsibility in my current position, and I've worked very hard to make that happen. As I mentioned, we also, during my leadership this year, our district has found ways to eliminate waste in building costs, saving taxpayers 14% on the cost of buildings. I feel like that is the role of an elected official to protect the hard-earned money of taxpayers. And you know, it's easy to remember if you're thinking of your own personal budget and you're careful with what you spend, you're careful and you work hard and you make sure it's spent well, we should do no less in government. We should treat it as if it were our own money and be very, very careful. Thank you.
I think it's absolutely the responsibility of anyone who has control over taxes to treat it as a stewardship. In my work right now with the LDS Church, I have the exact same feeling about the monies that we work with. And I think that the money that everyone gives towards tithing should be treated just like a widow's mite. And we should think about it in that way. And so we should be thinking about how can we give that money back to those that have been paying taxes. When we have a $1.3 billion surplus in the last 2 years, we shouldn't be raising taxes, we should be reducing taxes. And that's not what we've seen. The legislature, the last legislature had 2 tax increases, which just shouldn't have happened. They had $700 million to spend. They should have been wiser with the way that they spend the money. Additionally, I think the way that we treat it as a stewardship is to push the control of those funds down to the more local level. When you start talking about a state level and you're talking about millions of dollars, it doesn't mean anything. But if you talk about a principal on a local level or a local city, $1 million means a lot.
I have been that steward as I sat on your mosquito abatement board, and I lowered your taxes 50% after we had built a building under budget, and the discussion came up, what are we going to do with the money now? And I said, that's why I'm here, the elected official on this board. You're going to give it back. And even though it only amounted to $15 to $30, that's the money that feeds a senior sometimes for a week who's on a limited budget. So I absolutely believe in that stewardship. I also have the time to do the research to make sure that we have the numbers and understand what the taxes really are and how each bill affects those taxes. I will not be voting on bills that I do not understand, and I've seen it happen over and over again up there. So lowering taxes, being responsible. I don't like the government redistributing our wealth. I worked very hard to take care of my family, and I know you feel the same.
Okay, Rich, this question goes to you, and then Jay, and then Ed. Are you for or against the UEA, which I assume is the Utah Education Association? And the other part of the question, are you for or against the TPP, which I assume is the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
Well, let's start with the UEA. My dad was a member of that organization for 36 years, and it had value. And I think it continues to add value because we need organizations that be able to speak up for the teachers that we have that serve our children here in the state of Utah. And we need to continue to do that. And not only just the UEA, I mean, you can get into the Jordan Education Association, you can get into the city governments. It's a collaboration of all of those organizations that we need to work together to make sure that we get the education right down there to what we need. The other thing, it's interesting with all of these things that we've been talking about. I have voted against all these things. I've had the strong leadership and making sure that we have been doing these things the correct way the last 3 years that are up there. Am I perfect? No. If any of us are perfect. The other thing I've had when you mentioned the bills on some of these and some of these organizations that come in and want you to do it this way, I am not beholden to any organization. I need to look at the bill, study it, and make sure it makes sense for what we're going to do in Senate District 10.
I think you have to look at the premise of that question. I reject the notion that it's an us versus them or one versus the other. You know, education is so important in our state. It's important to our children. It's important to everything we do. And we need to solve these problems. And we need to bring our conservative principles and values to solve these problems. But we also need to have all the stakeholders at the table. And when you start a question, whether it's us versus them, I think that's counterproductive, right? I think it's important to get everyone at the table. Because real results and lasting results happen when we actually work together and actually drive good legislation. Doesn't mean compromise. It doesn't mean giving up your principles. It means going issue by issue and doing the hard work. Doing the work that takes more than just one legislative session. That takes the time during the summer months of bringing people together and actually doing the hard things. That's where I am. And so that's my answer. Thanks.
I believe that we should take care of the people that are doing a great job, and I think that all starts with Kyle Whittingham, who deserves a pretty big raise. As far as the UEA goes, I think we have a constitutional right to hang out with who we want to hang out with, and if the teachers want to get together and have a union to help them negotiate, they have the right to do that. For sure. Now, they also have the freedom to elect good people to represent them. They also have the freedom to elect bad people to elect them. So it's up to them. They can decide what they want to do. It's very hard to have the state legislature, the school board, the parents, the principal. I mean, there's so many people involved. They do need some representation in this politically charged thing. As far as the TPP goes, the economic power has shifted from Western Europe to North America and to Asia. We need to have a seat at that table and make sure that we open up as many free trade zones and as many trading partners as we possibly can. So the general idea of the TPP, I'm in favor of.
Okay, the next question goes to Lincoln, then Lynn, then Susan. Do you support term limits? What are your thoughts?
Without specifying anything here, I assume I'm going to talk about this at the state level. I believe that I want you to have more control over your government and for politicians to have less, right? I know this is a theme, and I sound a little bit like a slightly off broken record going back to this, but it's the principle that I believe in, that the government is of the people. I would be perfectly fine with term limits. I think that as an elected representative, it would be a little bit self-serving for me to go up and set the rules by which people could or could not challenge me. But a citizen initiative that would support term limits, I would support. Particularly at the federal level. When we have career politicians, what we end up with is people who get so entrenched in the system that they can't see new ways out of it and get stuck in the same ruts. I'm a person who thinks outside the box, and you need fresh eyes to look at problems, and I'd like to refresh the eyes in the legislature.
I'm absolutely 100% in favor of term limits. I would go with 1 to 2 terms for senators and 1 to 2 terms for congressmen. This is not a sacred term. Not having term limits is not a sacred part of the Constitution. The Constitution has changed in some basic ways over the years. Senators, U.S. senators used to be elected differently, and I think for life was the original way, but these are things that can change, and this is one that's needed to change for a long time. When you're a career politician and you don't have a term limit, you can kind of get moldy as time goes on. And when you have a term limit, you're not going to be worried about whether you're going to be voted in the next time. You'll make the best decisions possible.
I too believe in government of the people and by the people. And at the end of the day, that's really the best deterrent we have to people staying in office too long. If people don't want them in there, they can vote them out. I think that term limits are appropriate in some cases, but I feel like when we as citizens need to be engaged, we need to study the issues, we need to study those people who are representing us, and if we feel that they've been in there too long, then we need to vote them out, and that is our greatest protection. It depends on the office. There are some offices that we probably do need term limits on. Thank you.
This next question is for Jordan, then Lita, then Mark. how would you empower parents and teachers in regards to their students' education?
So I've talked about this before. I think the biggest thing we need to do is to take power away from the State Board of Education. And the two areas that are most important are within curriculum and funding. If we push the curriculum choices and funding questions down to the local levels, so local school districts and principals, down to the teaching level, that's the way that we solve this problem. That's how we empower parents and students to be able to make these choices. The reason is because the people on the most local level understand the needs of their students. So if their students have certain problems, they should be able to change the curriculum to be able to fit the needs of the students. I'm afraid that too much what's happening now is the teachers are teaching to the tests. We have such strong testing in the state that it's crippling the effectiveness of our teachers. And the tests themselves aren't effective. We have tests that parents are opting out of, and so only the students that don't have parents that are involved are actually taking this test, and the test doesn't mean anything to the students. We should cramp down on that.
If teaching is the noblest profession, then we need to treat it accordingly. One of the things I've written on my brochures is that we should have our educators teach in some form regularly in the classroom all the time. Whether they're teaching teachers or not, they need to be in the classrooms. We have too much top-heavy administration where the money is not actually making it to those teachers in those classrooms. So we need to incentivize getting the best teachers in our classrooms, keeping them, and allowing them the creativity that gives them the satisfaction of being great teachers. You know what it feels like to be a parent that is hands-on in your children's life. We need to give that to our teachers. Community councils have a great deal to do that with that. Principals, we need to allow the funds in the school funds to be able to be transferable so that local school districts can decide where those monies go.
I grew up in a one-school district. So my formative years, the educational decisions were made by the parents first and foremost, the principal and the teachers. And so I know exactly what it is to have that kind of an education. As has been mentioned by so many of us, we've got to drive those decisions down to the local level. That means some tough decisions have to be made, and as a senator, I have to have the courage, which I do, to say we need to relinquish some of that power at the state level. The federal government needs to relinquish that power. We need to make those decisions local. That's where they're made the best, and that's where they have the greatest impact on our students in our community.
Question 19, Jay, then Ed, then Lincoln. Within the last year, there was a community gathering here in West Jordan at an elementary school in this neighborhood to protest the building of the state prison. Did you attend this event? If not, why not?
I did not attend that event. I wasn't aware it was actually going on at the time. Can you hear me? Is that okay? Yeah. You know, when you talk about the state prison, I've had a couple people ask me about that. And I know it's in the works and it's concerned, but I have some serious concern about money on that. The fact that we have to spend so much money to prepare the site that was selected and all the money that's going to that, I have to ask myself, you know, is that the best use of the money? So I was not at that meeting, at that protest for that, although I would have liked to have been. Thanks.
I was not at that meeting, and I wasn't there because I didn't know about it, and I probably wasn't there. If I knew about it, I probably wouldn't have gone either, too busy out running a company. I researched the issue. You want to know where I stand on the prison relocation? Researched the issue. I hate having the prison at the point of the mountain. I think that's very extremely profitable land to the state. I talked to Rich about it. And I really liked the way that he voted and looked at it. And I think the committee that looked at it for how many years? 20, 30? Anyways, a long time. I think they probably got that right.
I believe the prison should move. I'm glad it's going to move. But once it moves, the state will still own that land. And that represents a real challenge for our area because whatever is developed there is going to have a major impact on our infrastructure and our transportation. We need to make sure that we prioritize the needs of this high growth area in the state that is one of the top 5 highest growth areas in the country. We need to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to transportation and infrastructure so that we don't contribute to a lower quality of life. We also have a tremendous opportunity here with the move of the prison to reform some criminal justice in important ways with the Justice Reinvestment Initiative and with increased assisted outpatient technologies. I hope that there's going to be a question on criminal justice coming up soon. But we also need to make sure that as the state-owned land at the prison is developed, that it is developed with the needs of the local community in mind and not for the benefit of the developers that are well connected with the legislature.
The next question is for Lynn, then Susan, then Jordan. Will you run for re-election after your appointment?
I think you heard what I said about term limits, and I don't plan to run for re-election. I think that I'm going to go in this and make a lot of people mad, probably, and do our community a service by trying to cut waste and perhaps cut things that don't need to be cut. They'll probably be sick of me if I do get reelected. I will run for election in a year or in next autumn, but then just the 4 years.
I think the question was, would you run after this appointment is through, which would mean that you would run again in March, and the answer is yes. And I want to go to the education question, and I want to tell you that the way that you empower teachers is that you get high-quality teachers, and then you get government regulations out of the way so they can do their job and they can work with parents. I have a daughter, several daughters who call me regularly, and they say, I have my son or my daughter has this situation and that, and I say, go talk to your teachers. It's you as a parent and your child's teacher that is going to make the difference, that is going to create a high-quality education for your child. And often government regulations get in the way of the parents and of the teacher. Thank you.
I would absolutely run for re-election. I would run for re-election as long as I feel like I could be an effective representative and also that I have the support of the people to vote for me. I think the more important question is, am I going to stay in office throughout the term that I'm elected for? The last 2 people who have ran in this office have left the term early, and we've had to have these special elections. I don't see this office as a stepping stone to something higher. My intention in this office is to serve and to give service, and I would run out the term of the office that I'm elected for.
This will be the final question. We'll start with Alita, then Mark, then Rich. The question is, do you support a halt on Syrian refugees? Why or why not?
I have great respect for all the peoples of the world. I do not support a halt on letting refugees come in at this time. I believe that we can be of much help to them, and I believe they will also help our society. I do believe they need to learn English quickly. I don't believe in some of the debt burdens that we put on the public because of the undocumented individuals that are in our society. I believe they put a great burden on our public safety officers, and so there need to be many laws appropriate for this time and for this specific situation to see that we handle it appropriately. I truly believe that these individuals will help our economy eventually. I would like to see them here, but again, there are federal dollars and many local dollars that are going to them, often offering things to their children our children can't even get. So.
A halt, yes. A pause, for sure. What we need to do is take a breath. We need to look at the situation, and we need to begin asking the right questions. Every one of us in this room are the progenitors of people who came to this great country. As you look at what's written on the Statue of Liberty, bring us your poor. We need not be afraid, but we need to be cautious. And so what we need to do is just take a slight pause and say, how can we better help these people who are in crisis? Because after all, we could have prevented it in the first place had our federal government really been doing what they should have done, in my opinion. So how do we help them? How do we join the other countries of the world and do that? Is that bringing them and distributing them away from their homelands where most of them would return, I believe, if there wasn't the turmoil there? I think there's other options we can look at and still help them. And if we do need to bring them into our country for a time, then let's make sure that those that come in are those that we would want to be part of our country.
You know, it's interesting that in the last 2 days, I've talked to about 100 of the delegates. That question that comes up probably 90% of the time. You know, I believe that, one, what our Commissioner Squires did yesterday, that we need to go through the proper vetting process as people come in here into the state of Utah, that we check the backgrounds, we go through and make sure what is going on in the state of Utah, that the people that come here. I travel a lot. I get that opportunity to see people from all over the world that live. In my industry, I cannot discriminate. I would go to jail if I discriminated. It's not that way. But we need to be careful. We need to be wise. We need to be prudent. That's the leadership that we need to make sure that we happen. Just real quick on the prison relocation. In that, we're writing legislation that when that does move, we're going to make sure that as that is developed, that the West Side gets the proper money coming to the Jordan School District, and that's one of the major legislations that we've got going. And developers, you know, there's some other key things in there that people need to be aware of. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to closing statements. You have 1 minute each. And we're going to start with Lincoln, then Ed, then Jay, and we're going to work our way back.
Thanks, John, for moderating, and to the party for putting this on. And I want to thank all of you for coming out. It's 2 weeks before Christmas. This is a real credit to you and to the caucus convention system that you would be here to listen to the 9 of us talk about these issues. I wish this could go on for another hour and a half. I love talking about policy. I love talking about the issues. I've talked to a lot of you on the phone and in person. I know that I'm kind of weird that way, and it drives my wife crazy sometimes. But this is how you build consensus for bold ideas and bold action. That you bring people together, you talk about common goals, you stay committed to a core set of principles, and build consensus. I develop 21 state government agency budgets every year, and doing that work has taught me how to build consensus so that the schools that I work with spend 40% less on their buildings than the Jordan School District does, spend $200 more in their classrooms than the state average, even though we get less funding. Thank you so much.
Well, I am very excited about next week for BYU and Utah that get to play a game this year against each other, and for this election. And when I started my business several years ago, we had many clients coming to us asking for a service. And the company I worked for at the time didn't want to provide those services, so we left. And we started a company and we made it very big. Pretty quick, we closed a very big deal with a Fortune 100 company where I had to recruit 1,800 people all across the country. My recruiting budget was $10,000. The headhunters we spoke to said they would recruit one person for $25,000. That's the power of the free market. And what we need to do in government with most of these problems is have the government, particularly the state of Utah, get out of all of these businesses, get out of the way, because there are thousands of very smart, ambitious entrepreneurs that are going to fix our problems for us.
Thank you. At the beginning of this evening, I said to remember 2 things: true conservative leadership and real results. That's what you should remember me by. When I say true conservative leadership, I'm talking about remember the proper role of government. I'm talking about fiscal conservatism. I'm talking about individual responsibility. And I'm talking, when I say leadership, I'm not talking about someone who'll just vote and handle issues, but someone who will actually lead out and drive and get the policies and fulfill the promises that you've been hearing time and time again. When I talk about real results, you should know my background and my experience. I actually drive results. I served as legislative counsel for a time. I know how bills work. I know how to get it done. I know how to get coalitions built. My current position, that's what I do. I get paid to actually drive results. And if you want real results and real action, I ask for your vote, because now's the time where we can make real good change. Thanks.
You know, we're at a, I think, a crossroads here in the state of Utah and in the United States and in the world. And I think that takes somebody with strong leadership. This is not time for the faint of heart that are out there. You need people that have had proven results that communicate. I will continue to communicate with each and every one of you as I have the last 3 years. I've had my town hall meetings on a quarterly basis. I send out my monthly updates. And during the session, I have continually with the delegates sent that out there. Will we always agree on every issue? No, that's not going to happen. But that'll be a continued point of things that we do. We need strong leadership. And in closing, there is representation, but you need the right representative that will do what you need to in the Senate, as I have done in-house, and will continue that as your next senator in Senate District 10. Thank you.
Recently at an open house, my wife and I hosted, one of the delegates came up to me and said, I need to know that my senator can be trusted, that I can know that they'll do the right thing. You know, our next senator needs to have a serious set of skills. They need to have the ability to bring people together. They're becoming a part of a committee, 29-member committee. They need to be able to bring consensus. They need to be able to address and discuss the tough issues. We've talked about a lot of issues tonight that are very dear to all of our hearts and concerning us. And those, as they get resolved, will be replaced by other serious issues. So we need serious people to address them. My professional background of being a construction forensic expert allows me to use that set of skills to literally drill down, to understand what the outcomes should be and what caused us to have the problems in the first place. And as your next senator, I promise to listen to you and to make certain that we're making the right choices for the right reason.
Almost 20 years ago, I took a case to the Utah Supreme Court as a citizen advocate who was pissed off because my city manager would not let the citizens participate in the process. I won that case in your behalf and in behalf of the whole state, that city manager cannot get in the way of the process. And surprisingly, that wasn't already on the books. I have been that person who created the collaboration, who got the pro bono attorneys to work in our behalf. I have been the city council member who held the line on taxes, who brought 114th through my district, where it had the worst effect on my citizens, my constituents. I've been serving you. We need a Republican woman representative in the Senate now. I helped get Susan elected when our school superintendent was non-responsive to our parents and our schools.
Thank you. Sit down. Thank you so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure for me to be involved in this process. As I've sat here tonight and listened to all the other candidates and our thoughts on the issues, I feel like 90 or 95% of the time we would vote exactly the same way. And so that's not what this election is about. It's not about who's going to push the button and how they're going to vote on each of the issues. The question is who's going to be a leader in the Senate, who has the experience and the skills and the hard work and determination to bring all of these ideas that we've talked about today to fruition. That is something that I can do. It's something I've done my entire life. I've been a hard worker. Everything that I've earned and worked for, I've had to do through hard work. I've done it in college, in law school, in my career. I've done it across the world in working in Eastern Europe and Africa on issues and sat across from people that are 20 or 30 years my age and been able to get experience and build coalitions. Thank you.
I agree. This election is about leadership. It is about proven and experienced leadership. I have had the distinct opportunity to serve you on the school board for 5 years. During that period of time, you have called me with individual concerns about your school and about your children, and I fought for you until those solutions were found. You asked me to look for ways to economize before we raise taxes. I did that. We found money to build 2 new schools. We found money to, we found ways to reduce the cost of our building. You asked me for more transparency and better communication. I brought focus groups, town hall meetings, and a listening ear to George School District. I brought mayors and city councils together to avoid a district split. I have worked for you in George School District, and I will work for you in the Senate. Thank you.
My wife and I moved back from Detroit a short time ago, where the motto seemed to be, what can my country do for me? Detroit was truly a model of government, big government programs not working. But Detroit made many small mistakes. One of their mistakes was the government invested in things like sports arenas and theaters to try to boost the economy. All they got was a bunch of interest from bonds. Now they don't have enough money to even run their street signs. We can find money without raising taxes. We can even lower some taxes once in a while just to show people that there is such a thing. And Utah is making some small mistakes. Moving back from Detroit, we could tell the difference. I'll make the conservative decisions in our prosperous times so that we won't suffer when things aren't as prosperous as they are now. Thank you.
So we went through 21 questions, 7 per candidate. But I know you have a lot more questions that you want to ask. But before we break, let's have another round of applause for the candidates. This is not an easy process. It takes a lot to put forth your vision and your passion and your explanations of what you intend to do. Let's also have a round of applause for West Hills Middle School. And also for Suzanne and her team for putting this together. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. It's a busy time of year. There's lots of other things you might want to be doing. It's a privilege to be with you. It's a privilege to moderate tonight's debate. Thank you very much.
Just want to let you know that we will be posting the debate on our website in case you wanted to rewatch it, maybe. And I also wanted to say how excited I am that we had 82 people watching this live stream through the Meerkat app. So there are 87 other people who are watching this as well. So the beauty of technology, I hope that you will see that we start continuing to use it at the county level to not only help you as delegates, but also help the electorate as well as being able to communicate. So thank you so much for being here. If you have any more questions for them, please reach out to them, check out their websites, and the election's next week at Merritt Medical. See you next week and have a great weekend.